Hello, today I will tell you a little bit about game theory tools in analysis of conflicts in literature. If we want to use the tools of game theory to analyze conflicts, we need to start by defining what game theory actually is. Game theory is the study of how players should rationally play games. Every player would like the game to end with a result that would give them the highest possible payout. From the Oxford Dictionary, we learn that rational means in a way that's based on reason and clear thought rather than emotions. This is the type of behavior we will expect from players. A game is any situation in which at least two players participate. The player may not be a person, but also an enterprise, a nation, or even a biological species. Second of all, each player has a given number of strategies that they can choose from. The strategies chosen by players determine the outcome of the game, and each possible game outcome is associated with a set of numerical payoffs, one payout for one player. We will focus on two related forms of non-cooperative games: matrix games and extensive form games. A two-player matrix game is a game in which player 1 has a finite n-element set of strategies that we denote with S1. Player 2 has a finite m-element set of strategies S2, and their payoff functions are U1 and U2, where the arguments S1 and S2 come from the Cartesian product of S1 and S2. If we denote the strategies of player 1 and player 2 in a way shown in the slide, and then also assume that AJ and BJ are the payouts of the first and the second players for the strategy number I for the first player and number J for the second player, then the players' payouts can be represented in the form of a matrix, hence the name of the game, from the table shown in the slide. Sometimes, for such games, it can be concluded that one strategy is more profitable for the player than another. We then talk about the dominance of one strategy over the other. For the matrix game from the table from the previous slide, we will say that the first player's strategy S1I dominates strictly strategy S1J when shown inequality holds. In the case of weak inequalities, then we talk about weak dominance. We can sometimes determine the outcome of a game based on dominance. Consider a game in the form of a matrix. Let S be the set of players' strategies. S is also called the strategy profile. We say that S is a strictly dominant strategy equilibrium if for each player their strategy with S is a strictly dominant strategy. S is a weakly dominant strategy equilibrium if for each player their strategy in S is a weakly dominant strategy, and moreover, for at least one player, this strategy in S is not a strictly dominant strategy. Alexander Fredro's most famous work is Zemsta, in English, Revenge. It is also one of his most outstanding comedies. It shouldn't be surprising that this work was chosen to be analyzed using game theory techniques. The action of the drama takes place at the end of the 18th century in an old castle shared by two feuding neighbors. The first of them, Cześnik, wants to find a wife. At that time, his niece, Klara, secretly meets with the son of the owner of the other part of the castle, Rejent. Lots of intrigues, misunderstanding and betrayals ultimately lead to reconciliation between the quarreling men. Revenge, like most dramas, has plots that can be analyzed using tools from game theory. Love, a motif linked really well to romantic works may be a reason for conflict, especially when two people are looking for a husband among a very narrow group of potential candidates. Podstolina is looking for a fourth husband and wanders between Cześnik and Wacław, while Klara is harassed by another admirer, Papkin. Therefore, we will want to represent this situation in the form of a 2x3 matrix. In order to determine the preferences of each woman, we will refer to the content of the drama in search for their opinions about Cześnik, Wacław and Papkin. Based on the information collected, we can determine Podstolina's preferences. The lower the number, the worse the outcome. So, for Podstolina's, the worst thing is when she chooses Cześnik and then Klara chooses Papkin, because she lost her true love, but also Klara is stuck with a poor man. And then the best possible outcome is Podstolina choosing Wacław and Klara Cześnik, so both of them can have good lives. Similarly, we can determine Klara's preferences. So the worst outcome for her is being stuck with Papkin, and then Podstolina marrying Wacław. And the best possible outcome is marrying Wacław and then Podstolina choosing Cześnik. Finally, we can complete the matrix of our game to obtain a table given on the slide. We have the key at the very bottom of the slide, so we can see, for example, that here we have 6 for Podstolina choosing Cześnik and Klara choosing Wacław, as it was shown here. From that, we can draw a shift diagram for the resulting game. We can tell that for Klara, choosing Wacław is always better than choosing Cześnik, because 6 is greater than 4 and then 5 is greater than 3. Similarly, it's always better to choose Wacław instead of Papkin, because 6 is greater than 2 and then 5 is greater than 1. Similarly, for Podstolina, we can tell that it's always better to choose Wacław instead of Cześnik, because 6 is greater than 2, 3 is less than 4, and then 1 is less than 5. So at the end, we can tell that the outcome of the game, so that the dominant strategy for both women is to choose Wacław. This result is consistent with the plot of the book. Podstolina agrees to Rein's request to marry his son, and then Klara, as a part of Cześnik's revenge plan, is about to marry Wacław. And matrix games allowed us to determine whether the decisions made by the characters of revenge are rational, appropriate, and consistent with their preferences. The obtained results coincide with the action of the drama, which is due to the very clearly marked opinions of the characters regarding conflict situations and their actions closely related to these opinions. We can now look at another type of game, extensive form game. An extensive form game, or dynamic game, or multi-choice game is a clear description of the sequential structure of decision-making problems that players face in a strategic situation. Such a model allows us for the exploration of situations in which each player can consider their plan of action not only at the beginning of the game, but also at any time when they need to make a decision. Matrix games limit us to solutions in which each player chooses their own action plan once and for all. This plan can cover unlimited choices, but the strategic game models does not allow the player to reconsider the plan of action after certain game events unfold. Extensive form games are closely related to trees. We start by defining a game tree for n players. We omit the definition of a tree and other basic definitions from graph theory. So we will say that a tree T is an n-player game tree if each non-terminal node of the tree is owned by exactly one player. We say that the node is owned when the players makes a decision in this node, and each terminal node of the tree is assigned an n-dimensional payoff vector. Balladyna by Juliusz Słowacki is a romantic drama telling the story of the titular heroine who seeks to gain power, killing her sister along the way. Game theory can be used to analyze the decision made by characters during the action of the drama. In case of Balladyna, an extensive game analysis can be used, which consists in presenting the situation as a decision tree, in which each node means another decision, and the branches indicate possible results. We can observe the first stage of the game at the very beginning of the drama. Goplana, in love with Grabiec, wants to get rid of her rival, Balladyna. She decides whether to use her powers and have Kirkor's carriage redirected so that he has to visit the cottage in which Balladyna lives. She may also not interfere in the real world affairs and lose her love. The options that the nymph chooses between can be presented in the form of a tree, as we can see. If we want to create an extensive form game, we must be able to assign payouts to all leaves of the tree of this game. For this purpose, we assign equal payouts to each player at the very beginning of the game. Both players get 1, as shown. Thus, we consider the initial situations to be in some sense neutral. Depending on the player's current preferences, we assign a payout to the more profitable choice. In this example, to save her love, Goplana should intervene, so she gets 1 point here, and if she doesn't intervene, then she loses 1. We do not change the other player's payouts. We also do not consider the further consequences of the decision made. Only the player's preferences at the given moment are considered. So, upon arriving at the widow's cottage, Kirkor, following the hermit's advice that he gets earlier in the book, intends to choose a wife from among the daughters of the widow. He then asks a question that forces Balladyna to make a decision, which is the next step of our constructed game. He asks the girls if they love him. Balladyna can tell him the truth about her feelings for Grabiec, or, considering her desire for power, keep silent about it and answer in a way that makes him feel that she loves him. Of course, she prefers the Lord than just some really unknown guy, so the payments will be as shown. Even later in the story, Grabiec asks Goplana to be like a king of diamonds, a figurine playing cards. The nymph has a choice to fulfill her beloved's wish or not. Of course, she prefers to make him king, so we have payoffs as in here. A characteristic feature of romantic dramas is the break with the ancient principle of three unities. The change of place of action and the multi-thread nature of the piece means that when Balladyna makes her next decision, she doesn't really know what Goplana has done. Therefore, at this point, the game we are considering will become a game with imperfect information, which we will draw as an oval. So, the widow arrives at Kirkor's castle, and it forces Balladyna to decide whether to get rid of her mother or take her under her husband's roof. Balladyna, wanting to hide her lowly origins at all costs, prefers to, of course, get rid of her mother rather than be identified with the peasantry. This is why the tree of the game looks like this. Confessing to her mother and taking her in would expose Balladyna's lies about her lineage, and people would turn away from her, maybe even expel her from the castle, along with ending the game. Close to the end, Queen Balladyna, like every ruler of her times, is also a judge. There are 3 cases on the docket: the poisoning of Kostrin, killing of Alina, so Balladyna's sister, and the suffering inflicted by the daughter of her blind mother. As the Chancellor points out, it is not allowed not issuing a verdict and moving on to the next case. So Balladyna can choose one of 4 options: no judgments issuing only the first verdict in the case of Kostrin's poisoning, issuing the previous judgment and then one regarding the killing of her sister, or issuing previous sentences and the one related to the mother's denial. The Chancellor, on behalf of Balladyna's subordinates, insists on passing judgments, so the ruler prefers to take a stand on more than fewer matters. Therefore, depending on how many verdicts there are, we get those payoffs. So now, because we were considering the Graviec may or may not be a king, so each part of the tree we have to prepare twice. So if it's not a king, then this part of the tree would look like this. By combining all the created stages, we can create an extensive game between Balladyna and the forces of the nature. So Goplana, the dendrite of this game, has the form shown in the figure. Additionally, we can now see this oval where we get 2 different parts of our tree, and we just have now the initial of the player and which decision it is. So we omitted some of the decisions from this presentation, but we just looked at the most interesting parts. To determine the solution of the created games, we will use backwards induction. So we start at the very end of both games, and here we can tell that Goplana makes the decision. So we are looking at the first coordinate in both cases, and we look which numbers are larger. So here 6 is larger than 4, and then 8 is more than 6. Since we have the imperfect information, we need those 2 decisions to be the same. So it cannot be just that we here choose this one and here this one. We need them to go the same way, and we do the same thing for the whole tree. So now this 6, 9 moves here, and then we check all of those, and at the end we get a tree of this form. So we can tell that we go here and then and here, and once we look at the book, we can see that we have obtained a solution identical to the content of the drama, and this is partially due to the way the game is built. In each stage we select preferences at a given moment, and the payout increases as we move away from the route. However, this result is also influenced by the drama itself. People make decisions in line with their own beliefs and current goals. They do not act against themselves. Balladyna strives for power regardless of generally accepted moral norms. Some of her decisions may seem inappropriate to others, such as murder, but in her opinion, only such actions will lift her to the throne and allow her to stay on it. Goplana's choices are dictated by the eternal laws of nature and love, very important in the Romantic era. For these reasons, we can conclude that the obtained solution is not only consistent with Balladyna's text, but also with the rational preferences of the players. And that's all I prepared for today. Here are the references that I used. And Thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, you can email me. Have a nice day.